Hey, good morning everyone. It is Monday and it's snowing in the UK, and I'm about to be joined by Kristen from I Like My Eggs Fertilized, who is over in Perth, Australia, hence the random time that we're doing this. Never done this in the morning before. So she is waving at me. I'm going to add her in now. She's one of our fertility COVID campaign ambassadors, so we'll talk a bit about that. And she's going to answer any questions you've got live. So I'm just waiting for it to connect. Hi, Kristen.
Hello,
How
how
are
you going?
you?
Yeah, good,
Good.
thank
I was
you.
just explaining that it's a rather random time. I've never gone live
Yeah,
on a Monday morning.
yeah, sorry.
But obviously you being in Perth, we needed to make the time work. So thank you so
Yeah,
much for giving up your
yeah.
evening to have a chat.
No
Um,
worries, thank you.
And I'd love for you to introduce yourself. I've just explained that you're one of the amazing 17 campaign ambassadors for our current Fertility Help Hub initiative, giving away free donor sperm or 7 rounds of free IVF around the world for anyone, anywhere. So head to the website fertilityhelphub.com if you haven't to enter. And Kristen has a wealth of knowledge, obviously, as an embryologist and scientific background. So that's why I'm so excited to speak to you today, so people can have some questions answered.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so as you were saying, I'm an embryologist, so I studied science. I have a science degree and a master's degree in reproductive medicine. So I have nearly 7 years experience as an embryologist, and I did go through my own difficulties to conceive. I've got 2 little kids now, but that, wasn't without its trials. So it was going through that and obviously working with people struggling to get pregnant every day that I did start my Instagram page, which is simply to educate people and make them feel that they're not alone and make them feel that they do understand what's going on. And when you break it down and you explain things simply, it's not, it can be quite a lot easier to understand than just rocking up to a doctor's appointment and your doctor giving you all this information and you leave and go, I don't understand anything that's going on here. Because I have
Totally.
had lots of friends. I've had lots of friends message me and they're like, what the hell? I don't understand any of this. Like, I go onto an internet forum and I don't understand what these words mean and these codes. Like, what is it all?
Yeah.
So that's simply what I do, is I just want to make things as simple and easy to understand as possible.
Amazing. And I think you're right, because to have access to someone so experienced as yourself as an embryologist is amazing, because often as people joining will know if they're doing IVF or having fertility treatment, you have a rapport and you get to know your fertility specialist, but it's very rare that you get to speak to the embryology team.
Yeah.
So
So
normally
and
you're hearing through the specialist.
yeah, that's right. And depending what clinic you're at, some people are going to have a lot more access to that information than others. Some people write to me and they say, nobody's told me anything. I just went for my transfer. They told me nothing. They didn't give me a grade. They didn't want to give me any information at all. So different clinics are going to give you different information as well.
Okay, so with your page, I Like My Eggs Fertilized, what are the common questions that you get all the time about embryos?
Yeah, so probably, yeah, the most common ones, yeah, the same. I get the same ones over and over and over, and that is the first one would be a day 6 embryo is useless, and absolutely not. Like, of course we will use day 5 embryo before a day 6 if we've got that option, but if you've got day 6s there and your clinic has deemed that they are suitable to freeze and they're good quality enough to freeze, absolutely I would be using those embryos. I had somebody write to me once and they said, oh, someone told me in a Facebook group that to just throw my last embryo in the bin because it's a day 6, and I'm like, oh my gosh, no.
Yeah, so
So
much work to create that.
exactly. And I think so a lot of people are quite confused with the day 5 versus day 6. So that's the main question that I would get. And day 3 versus day 5. The other questions are what else can I do before trying IVF, and IVF versus ICSI as well. They're the main ones.
Are you happy to talk about a few of those topics? And if anyone's
Yeah.
got any questions as we go, feel free to
Yeah.
shoot them over and we can address those.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Which would you like me to, do you have any topics you want me to go
Well,
on?
why don't we cover day 3 versus day 5 as well? Because
Yeah.
I've noticed since I had IVF, and obviously I don't have the scientific background like yourself or medical background, but I've noticed that lots of clinics seem to be moving to focus on day 5 blastocysts versus when I had IVF 5 years ago when I did have day 3 embryo transfers. What are you finding? Does it depend on clinic to clinic, country to country?
Yeah, definitely. I've seen clinics that do day 1 transfers, day 2 transfers, day 3s, day 4s. I've seen it all. I think commonly day 3 or day 5. But yeah, I've definitely come across clinics that everybody gets pushed to day 5. The risk with pushing everyone to day 5 is that there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to get a transfer. Has been studies show that some particular people, their embryos don't do as well in the lab to get to day 5, but they may actually do okay when they're transferred earlier on day 3. I completely understand the rationale for not wanting to put embryos in on day 3, because putting an embryo in the uterus on day 3, that embryo actually should be higher up in the fallopian tube. So a blastocyst is more in line with putting an embryo in the uterus. So I do understand. And also when you're taking all your embryos to day 5, you're going to get rid of a lot of those embryos that can't make it. So the chances of it being genetically normal are higher when you've got a day 5. However, for specific groups of people, day 3s, there's so many pregnancies that happen from day 3s. So these clinics would be wanting to look at, your clinic would be taking this into account. If you've only got a couple of embryos, for example, there's no advantage of keeping them in the lab extra days to grow them to day 5 when you can put the best one in on day 3, because you're already going to know what the best 1 or 2 are. So by doing that, you're actually putting it straight back in the uterus and not keeping it in an artificial environment. So personally, I see just as many pregnancies from day 3s as day 5s. So I think it's good that they're still offered. And like you said, you had day 3s and you had success, and lots of people have had, people having IVF years and years ago. They were most people would have been having day 3s or day 2s or day 1s, depending what their lab was doing. So I think there's different pros and cons to both situations.
Absolutely. And also, like, obviously what you do you see some people who have multiple cycles and having very differing success with the embryos based on each cycle? Like, is it hard to predict what's going to happen with each person's cycle?
It is hard to predict, especially because some people may come through on a completely different protocol. Some people come through on the same protocol. I have seen people that come through, they've got poor embryos, they come through again, they've got poor embryos, and they come through again and they've got poor embryos. However, I have also seen people that come through, the doctors put them on a completely different protocol. They may get less eggs, more eggs, doesn't really matter what the number are, but I have seen people do a lot better in subsequent cycles. So that is definitely possible.
And I've been doing quite a lot of content with specialists around the vaccine and COVID. And we did one last week with a clinic in the UK who had talked a little bit about, not wanting to jeopardize cycles with someone becoming poorly with COVID or having a reaction to the vaccine. Have you seen during this time, any change in success rates or like the outcome of cycles or the quality of embryos that could be put down to COVID, do you think?
No, and where I am in Australia, we don't have COVID hasn't really, we've had a lot of COVID cases in hotel quarantine, but out in the community we haven't really had it. So we definitely
You're not in lockdown, are you?
We were last week.
Oh, were you?
We had one case.
Oh,
we had one case and we were in lockdown last week, but my brother's in London and he's been in lockdown, like, as you know, for many months.
Yeah.
So for us, we haven't been affected. We are so lucky, thank the Lord, that we have not been affected thus far. So we've been having people come through. Back last year in March, we did get cases stopped. We weren't taking new cases because the government said that certain categories of treatment had to stop, but then we were back to treatment. I think we were actually busier because there was a lot less people going on their overseas holidays that they had planned. So we actually got quite busy. There was, we didn't really slow down except for that initial period where the government said that those category 2 and 3 and 4 procedures had to stop.
And another topic which you probably get asked about a lot, which I'm seeing in the community people talking about a lot, and I think some questions have come through, so we'll get to those in a minute. PGT or PGS, what do you think, like, as an embryologist, what are your thoughts in terms of whether it's worthwhile, whether it can have any effect on the embryos, that kind of thing?
Yes, this is a topic that gets me going. I think that PGT is amazing for certain types of people. For certain types of people, I do not, or I cringe when people tell me that they're starting IVF and they're going to do testing for no reason, because most people will get pregnant without it. Most people that need IVF will get pregnant without it, but absolutely you're going to have people that they're going to get pregnant and have losses, unfortunately, because of genetic reasons. And so for groups of patients such as they are of advanced maternal age, so the older patients, or they've had a history of losses before, or they know they carry a genetic condition, or they've had several cycles of IVF and they haven't had success, then absolutely yes, it is worth well, obviously you need to discuss it with your doctor, but your doctor may deem that yes, it is worth the risk, because absolutely there are risks involved. However, for most people out there that are struggling to get pregnant, they need IVF, they need to get the embryos put in there, they will get pregnant after a couple of transfers. Lots of people get pregnant from their first transfer, but you know, even after a couple of transfers, without risking those embryos by putting them through a biopsy process.
Is it risky for the embryos then?
Yeah, so I mean, they do say that the risk is small, but absolutely there's still risk involved. Embryos can get damaged. There can be issues with the results. There can be issues. You're having additional freezing and additional thawing that the embryo needs to go through. The embryo needs to be biopsied. Then the cells have to return a result. Sometimes there isn't a result that comes back. So there definitely are risks involved. You've got mosaic embryos as well, where a portion of the embryo comes back normal, a portion comes back abnormal, but we don't know whether we've taken a portion of those cells that are actually reflective of the whole embryo. So yeah, there are risks involved, but like I say, for certain people it is absolutely worth that risk. So that's why it's something to be discussed with the doctors to say whether it's the appropriate option for you.
And obviously it's an extra expense, isn't it, as well? So
yeah, a massive expense. Yeah, and I know clinics will differ on the cost there, but it's thousands extra.
I'm gonna tap in some of the questions just so that people can have your expertise whilst you're here, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there are so many things we can talk about to do with embryos. The more we're talking, the more things are popping into my mind.
Okay, I can't see them here.
Right. Supplements recommended for egg quality. That's probably more of a nutritionist question.
Yep, so that's a question for your doctor, but the common ones that I have heard of are CoQ10, DHEA, and growth hormone. They're not all going to be suitable for all types of people, but they are that's the main group of supplements that I have, that I know that there's been quite a bit of research on.
And that's where a nutritionist or a specialist can help in terms of whether they're right for that individual person.
And some of those are prescriptions. Some of those are prescription as well. I know the growth hormone is prescription, and the DHEA, I think you can get some over-the-counter versions of that. And the CoQ10 you can buy over the counter, but definitely discuss with your doctor whether that's going to be suitable for you.
100%. Yeah, thank you. Someone has just had a day 6 4BB, and this is something we haven't talked about yet, embryo grading, FET. Yeah. I thought it was a good thing as it's well grown. So now day 6 is bad. No, I don't say day 6 is bad at all. So what it means by day 6 is that it hasn't made blastocyst on day 5, but the lab still deemed it good enough to keep an extra day and grow on. And then they've kept it until day 6, and it's made an embryo that was good enough to freeze on day 6. There are lots of pregnancies and healthy babies born from day 6s. It is at a lower rate to the day 5s, but absolutely, absolutely. I would be so happy to get day 6s in the freezer just as well as day 5s. That's good to know. I think so for my second cycle, I guess, I ended up with twins day 5. And when I look at the embryo card, which I was analysing every second of every day during a 2-week wait, as I know everybody does, and Googling like to compare pictures of other people I didn't know around the world to see whether the embryos look the same as ones that had been successful. 2 were put back. I mean, this was 5 years ago, so things have changed a bit, but 2 were put back because one of the embryos looked poorer quality than the other. But they both took. And so it's fascinating to look at those different pictures because they are such different shapes. And what is the bit that you call in the middle, which kind of like expands? What can you tell from that? Yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah. So when I found a diagram here earlier. So if I show you this, and we're talking about a day 5, we're talking about a day 5 embryo. So this is a blastocyst, so that's a day 5 embryo.
So that little blob in the middle is the inner cell mass. So that is what becomes the baby. These surrounding cells are called the trophectoderm cells. They are the cells that invade. So they go inside of the endometrium, they implant into the endometrium. So that little ball in there is a little baby making bundle there.
Perfect. Thank you. And I think that's another huge point that you probably get asked again or about is transferring one versus two. And obviously it depends on the clinic and the specialist and the situation. But my thoughts were a transfer of two would make the success higher, but that's not the case, is it?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's exactly what I thought when I first got into IVF. I was like, why isn't everybody just having double their chances and, you know, just put them in there? But no, that is absolutely not the case at all. So studies do show that that is by doubling your chance, by doubling the embryos in the transfer, you're not doubling your chance. You're slightly increasing your chance of multiples, but which is a high risk pregnancy, which we don't want, because if you're having a twin pregnancy, the chances of cerebral palsy and premature delivery and many other complications is much higher. So we don't want a high risk pregnancy. We want to get people pregnant with healthy babies, whether they're, you know, however they come. But yeah, so how it was, there have been thoughts that putting in two embryos, one can affect the other one. So I don't know what the studies are on that at the moment, but you also have I heard it, I was listening to a doctor explain this to someone the other day. They were saying, you have the chance that they both implant and then you miscarry one, and that one that miscarries can then affect the other one, or you may be put in a situation where one needs to be terminated for medical reasons and then you're then putting the healthy one at risk. So yeah, there are so many risks involved, but absolutely I understand that where a patient has had many failed cycles and they're not having success, that the doctor may want to you know, take a chance of putting in double. So yeah, they are still done. Double transfers are still done depending on the clinic and the doctor and the patient, but yeah, they're not routine as they used to be.
Thank you for clarifying that. And how do you rate extras like embryo scratch glue? This person has had 2 failed transfers with seemingly great embryos, and the last was hatching and told that it was good.
Yeah. So so just before I talk about the add-ons, I will say one thing, and that is that beautiful embryos aren't necessarily chromosomally normal, and even your chromosomally normal embryos that are beautiful aren't guaranteed to work. So your things like embryo glue, I think it's a very good media, and I think it's very good. Where I am, we use it on everyone. It's just the media that the catheter gets loaded from, so the embryo needs to sit in something, and that's what we use, and it is a good media. I don't know whether the success rates have, you know, elevated since they've started doing that. I don't know. It's a good product, but is it the thing that's going to make an embryo work? If it wasn't going to work without it, I don't know. And with the endometrial scratching, I know that there are certain other things that the doctors use now. I don't think endometrial scratching is done as much. Some clinics may do it more than others. Yeah, I'm under the impression it's not really done as much because of success rates aren't showing a massive increase. There is something that I've heard of called Neupogen, where the doctors insert something into the uterus to help the lining. But once again, that's a relatively, hasn't been around for years and years and years. So I don't know what the studies show on that. But with the IVF add-ons, once again, going back to what I was saying with the genetic testing, is that for certain groups of patients, like your assisted hatching as well, for certain groups of patients, absolutely it may show a benefit, but everybody across the board isn't going to need to be, you know, chucking all this extra stuff on their treatment, because most people won't need it.
That's really good to know. Thank you. And I've always wondered this too. When it comes to selection for transfer, is that a decision made by the specialist, or is that something that you do as the embryology team?
So that might vary from clinic. Like where I am, it's up to the embryologist, because we're the ones that are transferring the embryo to the glue dish and then loading it into the catheter. So that's up to us, but I'm sure there might be other clinics where the doctor comes in and reads the notes and makes the decision. So that's just going to vary. But so yeah, how I do it is I will look, I'll get the file before a transfer, or before I'm going to transfer the embryo to the glue dish, and I'll make the decision based on how the embryos have developed over the previous days.
And as part of the embryology team, do you know when your patients are testing, and do you hear the results as quickly as the doctors do as well?
Yeah, so the results will go to, I think all the doctors get told the results, but yeah, where I am, we have a whiteboard where all the pregnancies go, which is really cool. So in the afternoon when you walk into the office, you can see all the pregnancies on the board, which is really cool.
Gosh, that must be the most amazing feeling.
It is really
It
good,
helps
yeah,
us
especially
out.
when you see someone on there, like every now and then you walk past and you'll see a name on there and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's taken so long, but they're
Yeah,
finally on there.
yeah,
Yeah,
amazing. And
yeah,
back to some questions, please, if that's okay, Kristen.
yeah, yeah.
Someone has had a FET, day 6 embryo. It ended in a miscarriage, sadly. I
Mm.
mean, the questions are what went wrong? The fertility specialist said the embryo had chromosomal abnormalities. They've still got 5 more embryos in storage from the same batch.
Yeah. Did you say proven chromosomal abnormalities or no proven chromosomal
It doesn't say
abnormalities?
proven. It says the fertility doctor said that was it.
Oh,
But
that
I
was
guess
it. Yeah.
asking for your thoughts on why a miscarriage might happen.
Oh gosh, with miscarriage, there are so many factors at play there, and that's definitely a medical topic. But yeah, what I can say is that for implantation to happen and for a pregnancy to go on, you have to have, it needs to be the embryo, the genetics, the environment of the uterus, so the endometrium and your hormones as well as many other factors, immunology as well. That's where some people say that the natural killer cells can affect the developing embryo. There's so many factors with miscarriage, unfortunately. I know that sometimes people are given a reason where they do have it tested and the doctor does say, like you said, yes, there is a chromosomal abnormality, but I do know lots of time, unfortunately, there just is no reason. And there's no doctor in the world that can give you a reason, unfortunately.
So hard, so hard.
Yeah, yeah, very hard. That makes it so much harder. In my opinion, that makes it so much harder when you just don't have a reason why.
hmm hmm
Yeah.
And someone has asked, from the development of an embryo, can you tell which patients might have high sperm DNA fragmentation?
No, so not necessarily with DNA fragmentation. So I have read that in sperm samples where there's high DNA fragmentation, it does affect the embryos going from day 3 to day 5. So some patients will have it is quite common to lose a lot of embryos from day 3 to day 5, but studies do show that in the patients with the high DNA fragmentation, that the embryos can do a lot poorer, or the blastocysts are a lot poorer. But if we see embryos that are poor, or we see embryos that are dropping off from day 3 to day 5, we don't know that that's the reason. We just see that that's what's happened, but we don't know whether that's a sperm issue, an egg issue. We just don't know.
Okay. And further investigations, this may be a specialist question, but what should people ask for if they've had failures? This person has got one frozen embryo left to try.
Yeah, yeah. So that's something to be discussing with your doctors, whether they want to check the uterus, so like do a hysteroscopy, check to see if there's any fibroids or adhesions or endometriosis, anything that they need to clean out. A few patients have, or a few people have commented written to me and said that they'd had many failed cycles, and then they pushed to get, I think in the States they call it something different. I can't remember what the procedure's called, but then they found out that they did have stuff in the uterus that needed to be removed. So you could be asking whether you need to be having your uterus checked, whether you need to be having your hormone, or I'm assuming they would have checked your hormones before you've started IVF anyway. But yeah, in terms of future investigations, there is a lot more that they can try that they may not have tried at the beginning. So that's just up to discuss with your doctor.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Another topic, actually, which we haven't touched on yet, egg freezing. Does egg freezing result in live births? As this person has said, they hear many stories of women who freeze their eggs but don't necessarily get a baby from those eggs.
Yeah, so that depends how many. Some people, yeah, in order to have egg freezing, you do need to have quite a lot of eggs in storage. Some people may come through and freeze 5 eggs, where I read a paper that said it's recommended you have 20 eggs in storage to have a good chance. Yeah, for a good chance to have one baby.
So it could be multiple rounds of stimulation and egg retrievals.
Yeah, because with the egg freezing, they then have to survive the thaw and then survive the ICSI and then fertilize and then divide onto embryos. So even if you get 10 eggs frozen, you might end up with 2 blastocysts.
Yeah.
So, you know, 2 or 3 blastocysts isn't going to give you 2 or 3 babies. Might give you a good chance of having 1 baby, but I think a lot of people don't realise that, for one, they can only freeze mature eggs. So in an egg collection, you might get some immature eggs in there as well. So, you know, in an egg collection of 12, we might freeze 10, and, you know, 9 of those might survive, and then 6 of those might fertilise. So of those 6 that fertilise, you might get 2 or 3 blastocysts. So I think a lot of people don't realise the attrition rate that is involved. And yeah, unfortunately with egg freezing, that is slightly higher than if we were making embryos from the start.
And to that point, is the success rate higher if you fertilise them as embryos versus eggs?
I think it's slightly higher. I don't know what the specific stats are, but I think frozen eggs do have a slightly lower success rate.
Okay. Someone has said, could you please discuss implantation post-FET and the 2-week wait tips? I don't know if you've got any recommendations or thoughts. You did an amazing...
Oh, so after the transfer.
Yeah, you did an amazing article for Fertility Help Hub where you talked about, I'll link it to the bio, where you talked about, you know, ways to prepare and leading up to the transfer and thinking about your well-being and food and just the whole lot. So any tips before, during or after would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, so before your embryo transfer, follow the instructions of your clinic, because some labs are going to have specific things that they tell you. So if you're taking a progesterone, pessary or suppository in the morning, they may tell you to skip that because obviously they need to put the catheter through, and they'll wash it all out anyway, but that may be an instruction you have. They may say don't wear any strong perfumes or deodorants if the room that you are having the transfer in is very close to the embryology lab, because we don't want the fumes from the perfumes to get inside the lab, because that does, we don't want that going through the air. They may say that they want you to stay back after the transfer for, you know, 30 minutes just to make sure you're nice and calm. So that's probably on the day of your embryo transfer. So just follow whatever instructions your clinic gives you. And then afterwards, they may say avoid, you know, don't go for any marathon training, don't do any hardcore sessions at the gym. You can probably exercise gently or exercise as you normally would, but don't be, you know, smashing out those hardcore gym sessions. Don't do any spas or saunas. You don't want to be overheating your body, just keeping it, you know, as neutral as possible. You know,
Even swimming. I didn't think I swam after my embryo transfer.
Swimming, I'm not sure. I'm not sure actually. So that would be one to discuss with the nurses, and same with sex as well. Some people ask me if they're allowed to have sex, but I'm not sure what the actual, I don't know what the actual recommendations are. If they say to avoid that for a day or two, I'm not sure. So definitely bring that up with your doctor if that's something you're wanting to do. And then for your 2-week wait, so after you have your transfer, you then have, you know, your 11 days to wait or your 9 days to wait, depending what day you've had your transfer. And yeah, just the same, make sure you're not doing anything to raise your body temperature. Try and stay calm, even though that's very, very difficult. But the best tip that a lot of people have said whenever I've asked patients that have gone through it is they've said keep busy and just book in stuff, which I know is hard when you're in lockdown, or you can't book in all those social engagements that you might have, you know, been able to do, but just keep yourself busy, do activities, pick up a hobby, do that kind of stuff to kind of get your mind off it and keep your stress levels down, whether that's journaling, colouring, reading, that kind of stuff. But in terms of, you know,
the days go so slowly, the minutes go so slowly, it's just unbelievable as people...
I know, and then you just end up on Googling everything. But I think the most important thing to know after an embryo transfer is that your embryo and your uterus, you have no control over that. So once that embryo is in your uterus, like, you've done everything you can do. Like, in the lead up to your egg collection, doing your stims, going through your ultrasounds, going through your blood tests, going through your procedures, like, you've done everything. You've got no control over that embryo now, and you've got no control of your endometrium. So, I mean, I know some people say you can eat this and you can eat that, and, you know, but none of those have been proven to work. If you want to, because it makes you feel better, then do it. Even acupuncture, some people say it makes them feel nice and relaxed, so go do it. I don't know if the statistics show it's going to massively increase your success rates, but I think, yeah, it's just important to keep in mind that, you know, you have no control over that embryo. You need to leave it up to your embryo and your endometrium to, you know, do its thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Someone's asked, how long can embryos be frozen and kept, I guess, at their quality or good quality in the freezer?
Yep. So once they are in the freezer, there's no limit to no biological limit to how long they can be kept, but there are legal limits. So in Australia, it's 10 years, and then you can apply for an extension. But there was a baby born recently that was in storage for 27 years. And
Wow.
and then the sibling was in storage for 24 years. So once they're in there, as long as nothing's gone wrong with that liquid nitrogen dewar, those embryos should be getting kept at the optimum temperature that they need to be, provided nothing has gone wrong, and they're fine once they're in there. They shouldn't be affected if they are stored, if they are maintained and stored well.
Cool, thank you. Someone has asked, just for a recap on success of day 3 versus day 5, it's impossible for you to give exact percentages, right now, sitting here without having the figures in front of you, but is there a huge difference between the two, do you know?
No, so I think statistically in the studies, the day 5s would have a high success rate because there is more chance of them being genetically normal. However, the certain types of patients that are more likely to have day 3s still have a good chance of success. So, yeah, I don't know what the specific stats would be. I would assume day 5s are slightly higher. I'm sure I have read that day 5s are slightly higher, but I still see, so many babies born from day 3s as day 5s, but I wouldn't have specific stats. But just keep in mind that, some patients would be more suited to a day 3 and some patients would be more suited to a day 5.
Got it. Thank you. Couple more questions if you've got time. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Someone has asked, how is it that an embryo develops as an empty sac when it was introduced after day 5?
Yes. I wish I had the answer for this because this happened to myself.
Did it?
Yes, it did. So, yeah, I don't have a reason for that. I don't know if it's in the lab. Every now and then I have seen a blastocyst so as I was saying before, where this is your blastocyst.
Yeah.
Every now and then I've seen ones that do not have this inner cell mass. So you just see the surrounding ball. That would be my guess, is that the embryo has developed to that stage and there's no inner cell mass, so it was actually able to implant and it was able to form a sac. So I've never spoken to a doctor about it. When the doctor did my ultrasound, he didn't give me a reason. He was just like, I was lucky that there was actually 2 in there, so one didn't have anything in there and one did, so nothing really happened. I didn't have a miscarriage. There was just that other one just disappeared. So he didn't give me a reason why that happened. I was kind of really shocked and just didn't understand what was going on. He didn't say anything. He just said, there's nothing in there. We'll scan you again in a few days and see if there is, and there wasn't. So unfortunately, that is something that, when people do come through for their scans, their ultrasounds, I do see that, that is something that does happen. Not every day, not super common, but yeah, it definitely does happen. And unfortunately, I don't know what the answer is for that.
And after 3 miscarriages following IVF, someone's looking into Zymot and Pixie. Is that how you say it? P-I-C?
Yeah, Pixie.
Do you think this could help? I
don't know what Zymot is. Yeah, somebody asked me about Zymot the other day. I don't know. I haven't used Zymot. I don't know what that is. But with Pixie, so I'm assuming most people would know what ICSI is, and that's when we're injecting the sperm into the egg. So with Pixie, what that means is instead of intracytoplasmic sperm injection, it's physiological intracytoplasmic sperm injection. And that is where we use special techniques to select a better sperm. So what I do where I am, I'm sure lots of different labs have different techniques, but we use a special media. I do have a reel of this. If you go to my page and click on my reels, where you'll see the sperm swimming really, really, really fast. And then there's another one where the sperm are trapped. So that's what we use for Pixie, where we add the sperm, they sperm into this special media, and the sperm that have intact DNA membranes, or they have the receptors for the hyaluronan, which are the mature sperm, they will get trapped in that media, and they're still moving, but they just can't swim forward. So we select those sperm because we, to us, that's telling us that sperm's got a more higher chance of having good quality DNA. So that's what Pixie is. I don't know what the success rates are in terms of the scientific research, if that's a massive difference in success, but it's definitely giving the girls in the lab or the people in the lab a better chance of selecting a good sperm for you.
So why would Pixie not be used the whole time over ICSI?
Well, where I am it is, so
Oh, it
I
is.
don't
Okay.
know. Yeah, so where I am it is, but some labs maybe, yeah, so some labs may not do it at all, or some labs you might have to pay extra for the little bottle of media because it is very expensive media. So I don't know. I don't know what other labs do, but where I'm, yeah, everybody that's our standard way of doing ICSI.
Okay. And we've had two more similar questions, which are around frozen sperm,
Yeah.
being tested for ICSI and DNA issues and being frozen for an extended period of time. Is that something
Yeah.
that you know anything about, or is that more of a fertility specialist question?
Probably fertility specialist, but I will say that we use frozen sperm just as much as fresh sperm. Success rates that I've seen aren't any different with fresh or frozen sperm. And if you're saying that you're using it for ICSI anyway, then a lot of those, one would assume that the sperm with the DNA damage don't survive the thaw and don't get used, but I'm not sure if that's the case. I'm sure some of them can still, maybe the DNA fragmentation is slightly higher in the frozen samples. I'm not sure, but from what I've seen, there's no difference in success rates with the frozen sperm and fresh sperm.
Cool, thank you. There's a question about endometriosis, which would probably be better for a fertility specialist.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
thank you so much for talking us through all of this, everything about embryos. I feel like we should have another session
Yes,
around
definitely.
IVF versus ICSI or PICSI, because that seems to be
Yes.
a common question that we haven't really touched on today, but I'm aware of time.
Yeah, yeah.
So a big thank you, Kristen, and everyone must follow I Like My Eggs Fertilized if you're not already. And also, I've had lots of people coming to Fertility Help Hub asking, saying we're in Australia, there are no clinics involved in the free IVF donor sperm giveaway initiative that I'm currently running on fertilityhelphub.com. That doesn't matter if you're willing to travel, because it's going to be based on closest proximity to each of the clinics who are part of this around the world. So don't let that worry you about applying, because we have taken into consideration COVID and travel restrictions.
Yes.
So that is okay, and check it all out through the link in bio. So thank you so much, Kristen, and we'll see you soon. Thanks everyone for joining. Lovely to chat to you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.